Christina Dent, founder, president of End It for Good. Christina, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing great this morning.
When I think about all of the people that we have on sometimes, it's just remarkable people that when you ask a question, can one person make a difference? Yes. End It for Good started as a passion that you had as a conservative Christian and also a foster mom, and supported the criminal justice approach to the problems of drugs and addiction and a lot of other things, and you decided to do something about it. For folks who may have missed it the last time or don't know about the organization, a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we are about to celebrate our 5th anniversary as a 501c3 nonprofit based here in Mississippi. I'm a lifelong Mississippian, born and raised in Jackson. I've lived in the Jackson area my whole life. And it really did start as just this passion project once I realized that I had really misunderstood the root causes of addiction. And that led me to start inviting other people to learn and consider if we could make some changes to the way we approach drugs and addiction. And by doing that, get better outcomes than we have been getting. And so we have hosted about 50 events all over Mississippi, conversations with communities on why what we're doing hasn't been working well and what we could do differently, and just continuing to grow.
So have you taken that from theory to facts in 5 years?
Yeah, it has been really exciting to see just the interest level. When we were first starting out, I thought, I don't know if anybody's going to be interested in this at all. And now we'll have, legislators that are asking us, hey, can you send us information on fentanyl, how we could address the fentanyl problem, things like that. So it's really encouraging to see people want to find better solutions. They're open to changing. And even if we don't agree on all of the solutions, that's okay. We can find commonality and work towards a better Mississippi where we can find areas to work on.
A lot of it, because we attach that or attack that through laws. You can't do this, you can't do this. We'll have test strips out there, some type of laws to react to the problem as it exists. And what you're talking about is going to the behavior part of it. But then again, behavior there are subsets to that where somebody who's 18 to 24 is going to be different than somebody who's middle-aged or older. So how do you do this? And what have you found out?
Yeah, so it is really challenging to influence people's choices, and yet if we focus on the root causes of why they're making those choices, we actually have a whole lot better opportunity to make those influences make impact. And so one of the things I learned about addiction is just that one of the main drivers of it is the amount of pain and suffering, trauma a person has had in their life. And we kind of throw that word around a lot now, like trauma. But for some people, they really have endured a great deal of it. And often in their childhood, through no fault of their own, it was done to them and not because of choices that they made. And so if we look at why they're using those substances, instead of just punishing them for using them, we will have a whole lot better opportunity to help them to stop that use. Because if you just try to stop doing one thing without actually filling it, if you're trying to empty their life of drug use, but we don't help them fill their life up with the positive things that make life worth living without numbing yourself, then we're not going to see good outcomes. So we often feel angry about drug use. We're angry about addiction. We're angry about what it does to families, which is rightfully so. It can be completely destructive.
Wow.
And yet, if we only respond to that with anger, we can just keep loading people into prison for drug possession, things like that. But it's not solving the root cause of why they're using, and it's actually adding even more pain and suffering and trauma
to
what they're already dealing with.
I think I'm guilty on that one. Christina Dent is my guess. I think because I think a lot of us think monolithically that, okay, we have somebody on the air and they're talking about college students that took a pill somebody offered them. It wasn't in a prescription. They just took a pill and they had an overdose, either almost died or died. And then we look at it and say, come on, you're a college student. Even if you're not a college student, you go take a pill, you've got to understand this. What you're just saying that it's not that easy. You got to look at where that particular person is coming from.
Yeah, and where the substances are coming from. We have so many people, illegal drug use in Mississippi has doubled in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So that's not the trajectory that we want. But what that means is that more and more people are using these unregulated drugs on the street that they don't know what's in them. They don't know the potency or the purity. They can't dose it appropriately. They have a much higher risk of dying from that. And so we have increased substance use of illegal drugs. And we have so many people who the response to that has been incarceration that now we just put out this report called Healthy and Hired on the impact of handling drug possession. And we're not talking about trafficking here, just drug possession charges in that kind of criminal justice way, instead of saying what's the real thing that people need here to help them make healthier choices. And the impact that has on our workforce and people's ability to be able to get a job and be able to provide for themselves and their families, which is something we know a job is one of the primary things that can help a person stop using drugs and can help them not commit other crimes if they have a way to provide and a way to find that meaning and purpose in their life.
Is one of the best solutions to this, Christina, almost like AA, where you have to be in a group, you have to talk about it, you need that therapy?
For some people, AA can be really helpful. For other people, the vast majority of people who are using drugs are not addicted to them. They would not qualify under any kind of medical diagnosis for addiction. They use just every now and then. So for them, treatment isn't really appropriate because they don't have a problem with that. But for them to be able to not develop an addiction, the best way we can respond to that is by honest education on the real risk factors that are there for addiction to develop. But also, it can seem like a really helpful thing to force someone, even if they're dealing with addiction, into treatment. And there can be ways that we can strongly encourage people to get the help that they need. They might lose their job because of their addiction. And yet, we know that for people who are forced into treatment, if you become abstinent and relapse, you are much more likely to die from that relapse than if you had never been abstinent in the first place, because your body tolerance decreases and then you don't know how much you can take without overdosing. So we want to be really careful with how we use forced treatment, because it puts someone at a very high risk of much higher risk of overdose. So we want to be really careful of that while also looking at how can we help people on the front end be able to deal with their substance use outside of the criminal justice system. And if they've had a criminal justice involvement, on the back end, how can we make sure that doesn't follow them for the rest of their lives, where they can't get a job? I got a call from a guy, a Mississippian, who a couple years ago, and he said, look, I've heard about the work that you're doing. I had a cocaine possession charge, when I was 25 years old, and I haven't been able to get a job. That was 15 years ago. I never went to prison. I was not a community risk. And yet here I am. I still have that felony from that possession charge, and I can't.
I want to hear what your answer is to them when we come back. Can you hang on?
Sure.
Christina Dent, founder president of End It for Good. Back with more next. When we last left you, before the Afro Man gave us his 2 cents of knowledge there, you said somebody called and they'd been with a charge of cocaine 15, 20 years ago, and it's still following them. So your suggestion and your counseling was what?
So for things like that, where we have somebody made a mistake, they made a poor decision earlier in their life, I think we need to start thinking about how can we, as quickly as possible, help them get on the right track and open as many doors to stay on the right track as possible, instead of putting roadblocks in their way over and over again for them to be able to kind of be a fully participating part of society. So if we look at a state like Michigan, last year Michigan passed a sweeping clean slate legislation where this was not for violent offenses. This was just for low-level offenses where the person had not had any more criminal involvement in the last 7 to 10 years. So these are not people who are repeat offending. This is something that happened. They've moved on from it. They passed an automatic expungement law that would take some of those long ago charges and remove it from their records, expunge those. And what they found is that even when they only allowed that to happen for people with very particular charges, it impacted almost 10% of their population that would have charges expunged from their records.
Wow.
And Mississippi has, here in Mississippi, we have about 1 in 4 Mississippians has a criminal conviction of some kind on their record, which is pretty staggering. 1 in 4. So 25%. Yes. 1 in 4 has a criminal conviction of some kind.
Now I'm wondering if some of that is suppressing that large number of people who could be working but are not working.
Yes. Our labor force participation rate is about 10% below the national labor force participation rate. And it has been much higher. In the 90s, it was right about 10% higher than it is right now. So we have all of these people with criminal convictions. About 1 in 10 Mississippians has a felony on their record. Now, those are not all drug charges, and we work specifically on the issue of drugs. But so this is not the full picture of labor force participation, certainly, but it's a piece of that, because when you have this many people with convictions, and we know drug charges tend to be the easiest inroad into the criminal justice system, we have a massive number of Mississippians who are just quietly not in the workforce, or they're underemployed if they are employed at all, which has a huge impact on our economy. We lose about $2.7 billion a year from unemployment or underemployment from criminal convictions, just in Mississippi's economy.
We can understand if there is a drug violation and something else happens where you shoot somebody, you kill somebody, it's a car wreck or something that goes wrong that happens with that. But we're talking about, and again, and I'm sure Michigan's not, well, I would hope, shoplifting, some things such as that, aggravated assault or something. But if you go 10 years clean, and it seems to be an isolated case, that's kind of serving 10 years in kind of a purgatory, almost like in jail itself. I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. You give somebody a second chance. And in that 10 years, if you're just in the normal marketplace, you're trying to better yourself, get better, more education, take better classes or training, step up in an organization, go from level 1 to level 2, which all of that is something you can't do with this.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you have in your organization or in your nonprofit, do you have a list of companies out there that you refer them to that hire people with a tainted background?
We don't have a list, although we're gathering information as we go from people who say, hey, our organization, I was just doing a presentation on this Healthy and Hired report for a business women's organization. And I ended up sitting next to a woman who worked for a large construction company. And she said, oh, we've actually started doing that. We have lots of people now who we specifically are trying to find people that we can help get a second chance and be able to find work, which is amazing. And some companies can't do that. Some have, contractual obligations. There's all kinds of reasons why they might not be able to. But for companies that can, offering that second chance opportunity is really amazing. Understanding kind of the root causes of addiction for the people who are struggling. There are some industries that are more impacted than others by addiction. There tends to be more people using substances in particular industries. And so for them to be able to rethink that, not as a moral failing of character for the people that are working for them, but as, hey, I have an employee who's struggling. How can I help them get the help that they need? And that might not work out. They might not be ready for help. They might not be able to save that job. They might need to let that employee go if they can't perform the functions of the job. And yet, if we want to help more people to be able to be working in Mississippi, which helps all of us. It doesn't matter if you're the person working or the rest of the people in Mississippi. The more people we have who are finding fulfillment, who are providing for themselves, if they're able to, that is better for everyone. And we can remove some of those obstacles, either by not putting someone in prison for something like a drug possession charge in the first place, or by pretty quickly allowing them to move past that by not forcing them to stay on, parole or probation for 10 years or something like that. Shortening those lengths, opening the opportunity for automatic expungement for people who, that we do have expungement right now, but you have to hire an attorney. You got to pay a couple $1,000s for it. Or you got to figure out how to do that yourself, which is pretty challenging. You know, if you don't have a legal background, it feels pretty daunting.
The other one is the exoneration as far as you're to vote and things such as that. Have to go through this unbelievable legislative process, which is crazy.
Yep.
Do you have, I'm sure you don't have a lobbyist, but do you have people who could call, a number where they could call you if any of the legislatures would like to take this, maybe to stage 2? And are you trying to write a bill for the 2025 session to address this?
We haven't written a bill, but we are always doing, you know, we're only a 501c3, so we got to be careful with our lobbying. We do mostly education, and even with legislators, lots of education on here are some things that other states are doing. This is what their legislation looked like. This is what we could do here. And we would love that. We got contact information on the website. You can always reach me at Christina@enditforgood.com is my email address. We would love to talk to people who are interested in moving this forward. You know, whether it's a small step, you think about, okay, even a small step, even if we just did one kind of charge that has, you know, people have had nothing else happen for 10 years, that's going to affect a couple hundred Mississippians. That's a big deal when you start to think about.
You think it's a couple hundred or more?
Oh, I think it could be way more. I mean, if you look at the number of, but even if we took the tiniest step, even if we just took the tiniest step, that would impact hundreds. If we took a step like Michigan did, 10% of their population was impacted, and it left almost 500,000 people there conviction-free. So it wasn't that they had one conviction expunged, but then they had a whole bunch of other ones because they had been offending. Almost
I can see it would be several thousand in the state of Mississippi like that. Certainly if you say 1 in 4.
Yeah, and I think it's really open opportunity.
If the qualifications were what you did 10 years ago that was stupid and it was a one-off, then that would qualify a lot of people. I was looking at the workforce dashboard. This morning we have over 43,000 jobs they are advertising and begging people to take on the Mississippi Employment Dashboard. That's just on their dashboard, 43,000. Maybe we could get a few of those to take those jobs because it is a lot there. So
absolutely.
All right, give us a website or a little bit more information how we can contact you.
Yep, enditforgood.com, ENDITFORGOOD, enditforgood.com. You can contact us there. You can always email me. We would love to connect. We're on social media. We are in the education business. We like to bring information and ideas and statistics and stories to people all over the state, and we'd love to come and connect with you.
Any events coming up or anything like that?
Yes, we'll have 2 events, one in Hattiesburg this fall and one in Jackson this fall. So if you are on our website, sign up for the newsletter. We'll send out that information pretty quick, and you can come. Those are always free.
In fall August or in fall
September and October.
September and October. Christina, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it very, very much. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Paul.